2023 saw the resale market come back in alignment with pre-StockX. So I always say that things happen in a 5-year increment for new businesses. And StockX was 2016 to 2021. It got disrupted by COVID, which means that it was a reset and things popped back up. Remember when I discussed the small pipe and the water pressure shooting up in the air and then the bigger pipe and everything leaking out? Think about that. The early years of resale had moments when new releases could pop and become profitable overnight. But resale was a matter of relationships and knowledge prior to StockX. If you didn't have the right connections or deep knowledge of the market, like I had a very deep knowledge, if you ask anybody, do they remember the Sports Authority bankruptcy? More than likely, they're going to say no. I was writing about it at the time. So I had this really deep well of information on sneakers. If you didn't have a deep knowledge of the market, reselling was not easy to pull off. It wasn't something that you could just jump into. There was a lot of risk involved. The Concord, the 2011 Concord, and Nike's Galaxy Pack, it changed things drastically. When those shoes around 2011, 2012, sneaker resale became less about finding dead stock in storerooms, and it turned into monopoly for deep pocket players. I was not a deep pocket player. The Nike Yeezy era arrived soon after the 2011 Concord and the Nike Galaxy Pack. In that Nike Yeezy era and the Concord and the Galaxy, there was FOMO. There was a fear of missing out. And as that was setting in, as I mentioned in part 3 of this series, pay to pay got ridiculous. The backdooring became disruptive. Now, there were still opportunities in sneakers that people didn't realize had limited distribution. So I refer again to the Curry 3. While everybody else chased the Jordans and everything else, I shifted and did a complete 180, went the opposite direction, and I went at Curry's. I focused on an array of sneakers from the Adidas D-Rose, which was a poor performer in Memphis, which is crazy, although because Derrick Rose went to college here. But I also found that the Chinese market didn't have the same access to Jordan. So now we're looking at 2008, 2009, 2010. We're going into 2011, 2012. At that point, I realized that GS sizes were easy to sell on Amazon. Remember, there was no StockX at this time. No StockX. You were either eBay or you were Amazon or you were sending your shoes off to Flight Club on consignment. So for years, GS sizes, I could pop them quick on Amazon. But I'm going to get to China. I'm going to get a little bit more into that in a few sections. I'm going to keep going here. After the Galaxy Pack, the basketball pack, the Galaxy Pack, Nike basketball began to decline. Nike, and think about this, as they've done in today's market with the Dunk and the Jordan 1, Nike inflated their retail pricing with elite options that took the KD, Kobe, and LeBron sneakers. If you look to my side and you see the pictures of these elite signature pack shoes, the KD went from being a $120 sneaker up to $200. The Kobe, $200. The LeBron Elite was $250. Every one of these models ended up at the clearance stores. But it's very similar to what we see happening right now. Nike caught the wave with basketball and the Galaxy Pack. The NOLA Pack. You think about the NOLA Pack. When Nike caught that wave, they started inflating the prices on the KD. The KD used to be $100, $110 shoe. KD has been a $150 shoe for over 8 years now. That increase in pricing is significant. It's significant. Right now, we had the Air Force One go from $90 in 2021, $115 today. In other words, it ain't no new thing that Nike inflated these prices. Today is very similar to that moment in time back with the Elite Pack. So Nike's price inflation on items which popped in resale, that's always been a thing. And in every instance, Nike killed its own market. If you look at resale right now, what's happening? That Elite Pack, those Kobe's, like I said, ended up on discount at the Nike clearance and factory stores. The life cycle of the product back then, remember I talked about life cycle earlier in this, it was still 90 days. When the shift from performance to casual sneakers happened, Nike didn't take notice. They were inflating the price on Nike basketball, and then they were forcing stores to take Nike basketball, who traditionally never sold basketball at all. Now, Nike not paying attention opened the door for Adidas, and their better priced options started to take off. Now, that should sound very familiar. But let's think about what it was back in the early 2010s. The ZX Flux, right? Those who've been in sneaker resale for a long time remember this. The ZX Flux was Adidas' answer to the Roshi run. Kanye had moved from Nike to Adidas. And the $90 to $110 pricing allowed the ZX Flux and the NMD to take off like a rocket. Nike was still pushing these inflated priced basketball shoes, and they failed to recognize that the seasonality of performance basketball, which the shoes still sold, but they sold much slower than in the past, Nike failed to realize that it was seasonal now. And Nike was in the beginning stages of the Nike Direct and the Consumer Direct offense. At that time, there wasn't a name for their direct-to-consumer strategy. There's no name for it. But Nike had started to force smaller store accounts to take on Nike basketball, like I said, and underperforming Jordan brand inline models. Jordan brand brought into its prowess and dumped Jordan 6 lows into the market and Air Jordan 1 lows. Air Jordan 1 low OGs. So we're looking at 2014, 2015. Almost all of this product that Nike was giving to these stores and forcing in those stores, as they started to like take away accounts and contract, all of that stuff was sitting. But the new releases from Adidas, the Ultra Boost, Kanye jumping in the air with the white Ultra Boost on at a concert, that stuff started to drop into the resale arena. Adidas was gold for a while until they followed Nike and they bought into their own hype and inflated the pricing of the NMD from $110 to $180 with a prime knit Sashiko. Adidas changed the shoe that was crushing it for no reason at all and jacked up the price. Adidas broke their own success and gave all of their North American business over to Yeezy. I hope that's clear. Now, I wrote an article a while back and it was called, Will the Adidas NMD Lose Resale Like the Nike Roshi Run? I wrote that back in May 2017 and then I updated it in 2019 with considerable evidence of how the NMD fell off. So I have information on 2017, right? With this NMD discussion. I have information on 2017 and where Adidas was selling 165, 174. And these were NMD R1s, which only cost 120, 130 after they had raised the price from 110. But they were moving at 174, $200 on the Adidas NMD R1, the Foot Locker Australia Light Brown, $200. Now, you come down into 2018, and the Ultra Boost was at $110. NMD R1 Sashiko Black, $95. The numbers just are horrible. 2018, $68 Sashiko, $85 Sashiko. One of the craziest things in the world that happened with Adidas at this time was the fact that Adidas released these prime net NMDs. They killed the momentum of their brand. And a store like City Gear was selling their shoes, buy one, get one for $1. So when we get back to history and we think about the history of resale, why is discussing all of this history necessary when looking at the year over year of new releases on StockX? Because that's where we were starting. This is what this final section was going to be on new releases. But it would have been wrong for me to sit here and not give you this history, all of this information. Because in part one, I gave a list of valve restrictions. Remember the pipe and the valve restrictions which caused resale to explode. I explained that resale was a crack in a tight pipe. StockX's rise in popularity in 2017 gave all of these analysts proof of a growing resale landscape. Now, I always argued when I was doing analysis for someone and they were asking me to write papers, I always argued that the growth was a leak in a wide pipe. So I gave you those examples early in this discussion. The arrival of StockX and GOAT brought new players into the business of resale, but it had become harder to operate an online shop as new releases made sneaker YouTube a new form of marketing. So having a sneaker early allowed for credibility. New became the trend. Prior to StockX, older shoes you could sell and you could flip and you could make money, no problem. After StockX's rise, new became the trend. The sneakers which could be bought on discount began to see diminished returns, and acquiring new sneakers, which were reselling, got harder, especially as the GS buyers from China began to send teams to the US to acquire inventory. This big scramble for inventory began. Now, if you don't remember this stage where you had a lot of people coming over here for the Poison app, and this was right before COVID and right after COVID, before Nike started sending a lot of product to China. The new release grew in value, and buyers began buying from buyers. Consumers started to get jaded. The tone used to be taking an L on sneakers. That used to be like a badge of honor. People would proudly display taking an L on sneakers because it was, it was a part of the culture. It was funny. You could just get a nice little, back and forth on Twitter talking about your L's. But taking those L's as these bots and people started coming in and snatching stuff and the backdooring, taking those L's on sneakers became an irritant. It was not a part of the culture. And this opened the door for smaller brands. And yeah, we're getting deep into this discussion. New releases began to fall out of favor. Now I'm coming into the current times now, and this is where we are, where you can't take a new release and flip it. The GS market collapsed. And that's because Nike went all in on China and flooded the market there. Buyers for the Poison app no longer needed to fill containers to ship back to China. Those buyers that were coming and sucking up all of the Jordan 1s and stuff like that, they just disappeared. You don't really see those buyers out there anymore. The post-COVID bubble popped. And the StockX wrote in their report, relying on one style no longer carries a brand. Now, history has seen sneaker resale move back into a narrow pipe, but I don't think that's going to happen again. Nostalgia used to drive sneaker culture and sneaker purchases in some instances, except for the people who bought sneakers out of need. Nostalgia doesn't drive interest anymore, and being a sneakerhead isn't cool anymore. Things have changed. Now, all of that to get to this point, 2023 versus 2024 new releases. So I'm going to give you two charts on new releases with the top 23 shoes of new releases from June 23 and from June 24. And I'm going to open both of these up so they'll be ready to drop in and show you this information. So I'm going to show you these two slides. June 2023, June 2024. Now, there's a lot in this, and it requires a lot of math, which is better seen in the charts. But looking at the top 22 sneakers year over year provides considerable context. So you see June 23, June 24. 10 out of 22 new release sneakers in 2023 were in the red. 12 out of 22 new release sneakers were in the red in 2024. What does that mean in the red? It means that they were losing money. So these shoes were being sold on StockX, and people were literally taking a loss on these shoes. In 2023, 10 out of 22. 2024, 12 out of 22 in the red. Number 2, the price premium for all profitable new releases in 2023 was $824. The price premium for all profitable new releases in 2023 was $824. In other words, the shoes that were selling for a profit in 2023, you would have made $824. So if you're looking at the 2023 chart, anything you see in green, you would have made $824. The price premium from the profitable shoes in 2024 dropped to $728. Now, you're probably saying that's not a lot. That's a $100 drop overall on the profitable shoes with fewer shoes. Now, the average depreciation on new releases in 2023 was negative $23.10. That means the shoes in the red, the average of those shoes in the red, you would lose $23.10. The depreciation on new releases in 2024, you would lose $46.50. That's extremely troubling. These are bad numbers. The best performing new sneakers in both years, 2023, 2024, limited release kicks. Now that's to be expected. There's nothing shocking there. But in 2023, 3 of the depreciated new sneakers had only single-digit losses. 3 had single-digit losses. In 2024, every new sneaker which depreciated, the ones that are in the red, every one was a double-digit loss. So get what I'm saying here. In 2023, anything in the red, only 3 of them had a double-digit loss. In 2024, all of them were double digits. A new release, Air Jordan 1, is like driving a car off the lot now, unless it's a Travis Scott. But even the 2024 Travis Scott's value is greatly diminished compared to the value of a Travis Scott in 2023. Now, there's a ton of data points to look into in regard to StockX, and StockX provides a unique resource for anybody that's willing to mine the data. I could keep going with these back and forths because I'm only looking at the top 22, 23 shoes in these charts that you've seen. But new releases, to be honest, they should have never been a part of the natural life cycle of product releases as it relates to resale. And they definitely shouldn't have been a part of the resale market in the way things took shape. When buyers began paying store managers for new releases, when sellers began using bots to snatch up inventory of popular sneakers, the inevitable breakdown of the resale market was scheduled. Today we are where we are. Resale can still be an additive process for clearing inventory. Resale is important in helping buyers in under-distributed locations attain the sneakers they want. Some people simply don't get the same releases. A person in Chicago and a person in Des Moines, Iowa. Who's going to get more shoes? The guy in Chicago. Resale is important in that way because it can help these underdistributed locations attain the sneakers they want. The last 2 years have seen a return to what resale was. Kind of. The problem is the genie is out of the bottle and the business of sneakers has changed. But there are always ways to right the ship. Now, do I think this industry is capable of understanding the cool down, which is important in recovery? Just like in sports training, cooling down is important. Do I think the industry gets that? Not really. I think every brand is going to discuss scarcity and reducing the number of particular models, the number of pairs that they release. But these brands aren't really clear on why sneakers, why kicks have diminished in popularity. And until brands begin to treat the roots of the flower, the roses are going to have spots all over. So brands might get those really big pops, but they're not going to be what they were. You have to treat the symptoms. You have to find the problem. And the brands have to do that. Scarcity is not going to fix what's happening now. You got to get to the root. Hopefully this series has been something that you appreciate. If you have questions, man, please ask them. I have all of this data ready and I can answer it at will, but I need good questions. So leave questions in the comments. I appreciate those of you who've been following along. That's it for this podcast. I know that was long. That was a lot of videos in this podcast, but I appreciate those of you who have followed along. If you click in the description, you can find all the links to these articles. And hopefully you learned a few things that will help you in discussing sneaker resale and where we are in that process today. Appreciate everybody out there. I'll see you guys on the next one. Like, share, and subscribe. Peace.